Hi there, Alan.
Hiya.
It's an honor to have you on Moving on TV.
Thank you.
I'm very, very humble to people like yourself that go out there, that do the job for the innocent children, brave, courageous souls like yourself and myself too, as I've been through stuff as well, and kind of why I do what I do. So it's beautiful to have you on board Moving on TV. And so what I'd like to do today is, first of all, I would like you to tell us a little bit about your history. So if you could in.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, Lauren.
Started, where you were born, and how did you, because you ended up in a children's home, and that's how it all started for you, this, I presume.
Multiple children's homes.
Multiple children's homes, okay. So without getting too emotional, because as I say, this is just such an unbelievable subject that we even have to discuss it and bring it up to the eyes of society, because the media doesn't touch it. It's shocking. But so I'd like you to tell me in your own words, how did you end up in these children's homes? First of all, you know, what happened to you?
Well, I was I was born on the 25th of March in 1955 in Hammersmith Hospital in London, Duquesne Road, Hammersmith Hospital. A postal code of about West 12, I believe, near Shepherd's Bush, not too far from the BBC, Wormwood Scrubs. And in them days, in 55s, the tram still ran down the Goldall Road. I remember the smog was always over London, and it was a kind of yellowy kind of atmosphere most days in London. As a kid, we basically, our parents were heavy drinkers. My parents were heavy drinkers, and I was the youngest of 4 children. I had 2 sisters. I had 2 sisters, to say that, and still alive. My oldest sister, Margie. My middle sister, she died in 2002. Just celebrating her 80th anniversary, the first of the month. And Margie was desperate to have children, and she couldn't have conceived naturally. So through what we went through in our child abusive way, I can talk about Margie in a bit, but I had another brother called Frank, so there was a year difference between me and my brother Frank. There was 3 years difference between me and Margie, and then there's 5 years difference between my sister, eldest sister Anne, whom I used to call Mummy Anne, because she was always looking after us, because we was always left hanging outside pubs and roaming the streets of London, West London, all hours of the day and night. We were a poor family. We lived in a council place. I remember my first house that we lived in. It was in a place called Marlhill Street, and it was just off the Goldall Road in Shepherd's Bush. I remember we used to, as I say, play on the streets and that. And I remember being outside a public house as the parents were in the pub, and they used to bring you out, I don't know, a glass of lemonade or whatever the case, or a packet of crisps or whatever it is. And that's basically what you kind of lived on. You know, we didn't have a lot. We weren't. My parents weren't rich, and as I say, we lived in a council place. And my mum left the iron on in the house when she went into the pub and took us outside to play. I remember our house got burnt down in Mardale Street in Shepherd's Bush. I just remember everything being so black and charred, and the plates all being very, very black and sooted up and everything. I always remember to this day, it lived with me forever. I used to have this little tortoise, and I used to pull this tortoise on a string. And as I pulled the tortoise, its front and back legs moved on this tortoise. It was strange, and it was badly damaged and burnt in the fire. There was hardly anything left of it. But that's what I remember of my very, very first house in Mardale Street. And then they moved us to a place a bit further down the Uxbridge Road, between Uxbridge Road and Goldhawk Road, and it was called Stowe Road. And it was only a 2-bedroom flat. So my mum and dad lived in one room, and all 4 of us had the other bedroom. So we had a double bed kind of thing with all 4 of us slept in. And if you wanted to go to the toilet, you had to go downstairs to the bathroom in the cellar. And at night, because we used to have coal, that, you know, a chute where they opened up the lid in the road, in the street, and the coalman used to drop the coal through the chute into the cellar. But because it being like London as it was, we used to have a terrible problem with sewer rats. And at night you could hear them screaming and scratching at the doors and climbing up the stairs and everything. So no one would ever go downstairs to the bathroom, to the toilet at night, because it was too petrified. And on occasions when I was downstairs, you could see their piercing eyes, and or you could hear them scuttling about. So you tried to get away from that area as quick as you could, but you had to go down there because the bathroom was downstairs in the basement, and the toilet, the only toilet we had in the house. And my mum and dad used to use a bucket. And we had a front room, and basically that's all we had. We had a living room, front room, kitchen, all sort of, and 2 kind of rooms. And we used as bedrooms, and downstairs was a bathroom. And it was like down the bottom of our road, we used to have this dump, and it was like a playground to us kids. We used to go downstairs into the basement, out the backyard, there was a little bit of greenery, and then we used to climb this huge wall, must have been about 15 foot high, and shimmy along the top of the roof as kids, and go down to the tip. And I always remember I was throwing something in the tip once, a lump of concrete or something, and I hit this boy on the head and split his head open. I didn't do it intentionally, it just happened, and you know, kids were playing and accidents happen, and I split his head open. But I was so frightened to go home because I knew my dad would give me a good hiding, because my dad used to beat me with a leather belt. And so my abuse started firstly at home. And I remember being...
So
sorry?
Physical abuse started from your own father?
Yeah, my own father used to beat me.
Yeah.
I used to sometimes think, because I was the youngest of the four of us, and I was the last one, I wasn't wanted. And for some reason, he used to take his anger out on me, and I was petrified of him. And we had this kitchen table where we used to kind of like eat our meals, and under the kitchen table was this cardboard box. Well, it was Alan's cardboard box. I used to hide in this cardboard box from my father, and if he used to come in, that used to be my hide, and I wouldn't come out of it at all. But he knew where I was, and he used to drag me out screaming and pulling me by the hair and taking his leather belt off, and he'd hold you with one hand and manage to take his belt off with the other, with one hand, and hit you. Yeah, quite brutally. I was quite badly damaged by that, I think. Beaten by my own father. Very rough, tough kind of guy, my father. He was a bit of a street fighter. Yeah, he wanted to take the whole world on. He wanted to fight the whole world. He'd stand in his long johns, and the long john top on, white top on, and long john bottoms on, and pissy yellow pants on. And he'd want to fight the whole street. And I just remember being a very angry, aggressive man, and taking his anger out on me. And, you know, if I could get out of the house, you know, and sneak in either through the wall at the back, up the stairs, creep in and go into the bedroom, I got protection from my sister Anne, Mummy Anne. And Anne was always there to look after us. Hence I called her Mummy Anne, because she was like, although 5 years, you know, it doesn't seem a lot when you're probably 4 and you've got a sister of 9. it makes that big difference to somebody of that age, if that makes sense. Yeah, so what happened was, it was virtually straight away. I mean, I've managed to get my records after a lot of trouble for years and years and years. I could not get my records for love nor money, and I tried every single thing to get my childcare records. I just couldn't get them. Tried everything, tried solicitors, tried police, tried every single thing, right into Hammersmith and Fulham Council. People saw us in and around the streets, reported this obviously to the council. Supervision orders got taken out of us, or court orders got taken out of us, and we was put into respite care. They called it respite care because you was put into various children's homes, and then if they felt necessary, would release you back to your parents' care if your parents showed some signs. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to piece some of my history together, because it would appear that my mother was in debt to social services. I don't know how that came about or what that was all about, whether she had to pay for us to go into care. I don't know. In them days, there is talk of something like that used to happen. And I was in
Can you tell us, can you tell us, sorry to stop you there, do you remember the name of the first home, respite care, where you were put?
The children's homes I went into I was in a place called Elsfield House, which was a holding centre. So they'd put you in Elsfield House. For some reason, that was linked to Wandsworth. And from Elsfield House, I went to other children's homes. I think I had a short stay, and it might have only been hours, in a place called Shirley Oaks.
Okay, so let's go back there. So how were you treated? When was the first time that you were actually hurt in some way in any of these particular?
I can't remember too much about my young years in being in care. Anything could have happened, because I just don't know. It was like you was from pillar to post. You was moved around so much from different. Let's put it a different way. I was in 5 children's homes before I went to Beechholme age 6. So they virtually, and this is a bit strange because in my records, the inconsistencies in my records, the redacting of my records, and the crossing out and the blanking out and the missing parts of my records, they've actually got me in care before I was actually born.
Right, okay.
Sounds strange, yeah. And then they got me in leaving different children's homes and different dates.
Right. Okay, so I mean, so were you put into care with your brothers and with your siblings?
I don't remember being in care with my brothers and sisters at all, no. Okay. The only time I remember being in care was with my sister Anne, and that was in a children's home called Oakley Street. That was 94 Oakley Street in Chelsea. And then I was in a place called Harp Sleep. I don't know what that is, Harp Sleep. Okay. But that was at a very young age.
Okay, so basically, just to clarify, that when you were 4 years old, you couldn't actually discuss this with one of your older siblings to find out if anything happened to them?
You just got memories of some of the things you did, like the firehouse and the tortoise, and roaming the streets of London and playing down a tip. Some of the things you used to do. I remember in our house in Stowe Road, we used to have a television that used to run on sixpences. Yeah. And we used to put sixpence in the back of the television. I always remember the rediffusion sign on the television. We weren't rich, and when we used to live on sort of like bread and dripping.
Right. Okay.
Mum was always cooking chips, and the lard she'd use, and she'd put that on bread and butter or bread for you to eat, or she'd get some money from. It was like hitting the jackpot when the man came to empty the television machine, because if a proportion of the money that they took, they'd give you some of it back.
Okay.
Like a refund.
Right. But what I'm trying to ascertain, sorry to ask again, is if you were with any of your older siblings and whether they actually remembered anything that could have happened when you were so young? Did they ever talk about anything that
No.
happened to them when you were young? No. Okay. So
No, they never talked to me, and I will discuss that later as we go on about Beechholme, which was the most abusive children's home that I was in, and I was in Beechholme for 11 years.
okay.
So not only did what happened was, if we just explaining a little bit about life at home, it was tough, it was cruel, and when my parents got a rebate from the television money, they were straight down a pub. It was beer money to them, and every now and then they'd give us sixpence, and we'd go to a pie and mash shop, and like pie and mash was like poor man's food, and we used to have that, and that was our treat for the week. And we didn't live well, we didn't eat well. I was only a skinny little thing, as you know. When I was dressed in the children's homes, I looked like an orphan. I looked like a refugee, or you could tell I was an orphan from photographs of me. If you find the photographs of me, you'll see me in shorts. They placed you in shorts in Beechholme. And then I remember being taken to Marylebone Magistrates Court or Juvenile Court, age 6, around about 6. And I'm looking up, and I'm looking at, I've never seen a unicorn before, and I'm looking at this horse with the horn out of his head, and looking at the lion and the crown above the judge's head. And this judge is looking down at me, a little 6-year-old boy, and said, "Would you like to go to the seaside, sonny boy?" I'd never been to the seaside. There was talk of us being at a place called in St Leonard's on Sea, but I don't recall that. And he said, "Would you like to go to the seaside?" And next thing, you know, I thought, "Oh, it's great, I'm going to the seaside." And they put us in the Black Maria. I was in Oakley Street prior to that with my sister Anne. And I remember that was very old. I remember rows and rows of sinks. It was very sort of like military. Everything was done to, it was done to a sort of like very, very strictly. And I remember very, very little from the young age. Beechholme was the worst nightmare, because being taken to Beechholme from the judge asking me if I'd like to go to the seaside, I got there, and of course I was processed, and I went in underneath the clock tower at Beechholme, massive place, 24 houses in this children's home, and they were all named after trees. And it was called Beechholme because this avenues, the top end and the bottom end of the avenue, were lined with beech trees, huge beech trees that line the avenues. And I was processed in the office, where it was kind of like I was being psyched. I don't know what it was. I was being interviewed, but I didn't really know what was going on.
you were just, what, 6 or something?
Being processed, basically.
Little boy, 6 years old.
Yeah. And I remember they taking me to the stores, and they said to me, "Right, here's your clothes." And they give you all these clothes, and all the clothes had labels in them with Beechholme written on it in red writing. So all your clothes, your pants, your socks, shirt, everything you had the letters of the children's home written into it. And then a lot of your other stuff, they'd write in a pen with your name on. Yeah. So your flannels, they used to write, I think, on the flannel in a biro or some sort of, not, you know, whatever they what stayed there. Ink in them days seemed to stay. And they used to put a plaster, like an orange plaster, like you can get the plaster just to hold a bandage on or something. And they used to give you a strip of plaster with your name on it, on a toothbrush, and on your beaker. And your towel had Beechholme sewn into it. And the rest of your clothes, you were labelled. And I remember being taken to a house called Laburnum, and I was like skipping down the avenue, more excited to see the sea. I wanted to see the sea because I hadn't seen the sea, and I didn't know it was landlocked. And I was still going through this like processing, and it took me to this house called Laburnum, and this woman opened the door at Laburnum, and I was taken by a member of the staff. So they took us in the front door, and we weren't ever allowed to use the front doors. We always used to have to use the back doors. And I remember being gone in, and this woman opening the door, and she looked down at me over the top of her glasses. Her name was Grace Robinson, and she was one of my abusers. Grace Robinson, yeah, she was one of my abusers.
Remember that name, Grace Robinson. Yes.
And she was there, and also had an assistant called Audrey Wilson, and she was another one of my abusers. Audrey Wilson, a Welsh woman.
Robinson, okay.
And yeah, if I said to you, she looked, to give you some sort of image, she looked the splitting image of Hilda Ogden. Right. And she had this pinny on, her hair in rollers, and yeah, she just looked over you at her glasses, and she was just a very, very disciplinarian, very, very strict, and wouldn't think twice about shoving you along, kind of forcibly moving you on. And the hand behind the back comes to, you know, to mind, being moved on. And very, very kind of like where there was a boys' dormitory, a girls' dormitory, a kitchen, a corridor where you had your cloakrooms and your stuff. The bathrooms were downstairs, which were a punishment area that I endured on multiple occasions. They had the dining room with about 4 round tables with wooden chairs all the way around them. And you had up to probably between 12 and 20 kids in a house. And remember, there's 24 of these houses. There was a primary school, a swimming pool, a gymnasium, which had a stage.
So from the outside, sorry, Alan, from the outside, it looked like a really good place to be. As I say, your impression was you're going to be by the sea, and anyone who could see it from the outside, they could see this great place with a gymnasium and a pool. But what was going on in the inside was sinister.
Well, you couldn't really see it unless you actually went inside it. It was kind of like at one stage gated. And there are pictures on Google. If you type it in on Wikipedia, it comes up Beechholme with the gates on it. And it tells you about how bad it was just by Googling it.
So,
and sorry.
Going to take it. So what was your first experience of any?
Well, my first impression was I had to go through the processing thing, shown around the house, and then the kids were showing me where we go and showing me the outside. There was like all these outside toilets. We had to use these outside toilets. We weren't allowed to use the inside toilets. There was one if we needed to go inside, downstairs, which we was only allowed to use in emergencies. The rest of the time we had to go outside in the cold and in the rain to these 4 toilets outside, like, and an outhouse where they used to keep the potatoes, and whitewashed walls with planks across them, just a bare room, an outhouse. And I remember every second house had a big, huge air raid shelter, because Beechholme goes back to the 1800s, and it was a workhouse for children from London, Kensington and Chelsea. And I think in its day, 1888 I believe it goes back to, and I think in its day it had its own regiment of soldiers. So the boys not only went from the poor streets of Kensington and Chelsea, they were put in care, and then they went into the army. So from going into childcare, they was put in and fought in the war and probably never had a life of their own. And as I say, the kids were showing me around Laburnum. And I was looking around the back and I said, so where's the sea? Where's the sea? I'm fascinated to see where the sea is. And I'm taken over to the back where the railway line is, which, you know, goes to London. And I'm looking in the distance, is that the sea? Is that the sea? Because I was more interested in finding out where the sea was.
Yeah.
It was like a punishment or torture. It's imprinted on my mind that I'm going to the sea. And that's all I was looking for. And it's strange, and as weird as that sounds, a young lad,
young kids,
yeah, looking for the seaside, and looking at the back, I can see your college in the distance in the hazy kind of sunshine, They said, is that the sea under there? Because it was kind of like haze. They said, you know, we're near the sea. In fact, you're probably about 60 miles from Brighton, the nearest sea, and you're landlocked because you're completely, you know, kids just said to me, what sea? You know, we're near the sea. It's what they told you. And for a judge to tell a young 6-year-old boy who's going to the seaside, if it wasn't bad enough being taken away from your brothers and sisters and your home. But what also happened in Beechholme, all my family were in Beechholme. I had 2 sisters and another brother, and we were all put in separate houses. We were never put in. We never ever saw each other again as a family. Once we went to Beechholme, they put us all in different and separate houses. Like my sister Margie was in a very abusive house and she got abused. My oldest sister Anne, she was in a house, she got abused. Frank was in another house at the top end of the avenue. He got abused, and I got abused in my house. So a whole family were abused. But Beechholme destroyed our family because we never ever shared after Beechholme a room together as 4. You know, there'd be me and my 2 sisters, or I'd go and see my brother, and I'd try and broker and make the, you know, peace and try and do something. But Beechholme made Frank such an aggressive person. He was just like my father. He wanted to fight the world. And he took no prisoners.
Sorry.
So
it basically broke you up because it's easier than to do what they do to you, because if you're together, then, you know, it's not going to be as easy, is it? So again,
I remember seeing my sister Anne, because they put me down at the tea table.
Yeah.
And I was saying it's like a military parade, all regimental, and the children are all around these round tables sitting at these chairs. And I can see my sister through the windows in the dining room walking up the avenue, and I left the table and I ran outside and I was holding on to my sister and I said, take me away from here, take me away from here. I don't like this. And I want to be with you.
Sorry. Was this after you were abused?
No, this is before all this started.
Or any of it?
This was virtually straight away. My sister obviously had heard that I was coming to Beechholme, and they was putting me there. And she obviously came to see if I was all right. But my house parent came out of the cottage because I ran out and told me to get back into the house straight away, give me a whack round the head, pushed me inside, and told my sister to better off get back to your own house and do as she was told. And we had to call them aunties and uncles. So we had to call Grace Robinson Auntie Grace, Audrey Wilson Auntie Audrey, and the men's staff Uncle Pete, Uncle Tom, Dick and Harry. Grace was very, very fond of slapping you, hitting you, kicking you, pushing you. It was very, very strict house, Laburnum. Very, very, very strict. And I often got, they used to sort of like whack you around the head. Terrible thing they used to do, and I always remember it because they put you in shorts, is you used to slap the back of your legs. You used to hold you with the collar of your things to try and stop you and keep whacking the backs of your legs. And this punishment was a daily thing. You know, you would always get slapped and punched or kicked or pushed.
And you basically, Alan, have done nothing. You're just being a child.
Yeah. And
they're just bullies that are out their frustration.
They were not proper carers. They were not proper. It was kind of like no training with children. It just seemed to be so regimental and so kind of like the rules were similar in a lot of the houses, and I remember my bedroom was under a window, and there was 2 bunk beds this side, another bed here, 2 bunk beds the other side of the dormitory, another bed the other side, and then there was 2 partitioned bedrooms for elder kids. So some of the older children, probably 12, 13, might have been in them cubicles, whereas kids of 6 and upwards or even younger would be in the other parts of the dormitory. And I remember on one occasion, Audrey Wilson, what you used to get was Beechholme was covered in beech trees, and you looked on the ceiling, and the street lights used to, the canopy of the trees used to go over the street lights, kind of like that, and cover them. And as the light lit, it shined through the leaves, and they make a dancing pattern on the dormitory ceiling, because you could see them through the windows. And I always remember this dancing pattern on the ceiling as Audrey Wilson came over my bed, and I just saw this big dark shadow over my bed as she was leaning over the bed, and I could feel this. I was being touched under the bed covers and stroked, and it felt like she was touching my private parts, and I didn't know what to do, and she was touching my body all over, and I just froze, and I was so frightened of this, and I don't know how long it went on for. It could have been on 5 minutes, it could have been 10 minutes, and I just froze. And I remember I never ever wet the bed. I was so petrified, and I curled into a little ball, and I pissed the bed. I wet the bed, and I curled up into a little ball, and I put my hands around my knees and just stayed there, frozen in the corner of the bed, you know, against the bed head. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, I remember being dragged downstairs by Audrey Wilson, and calling me a dirty little boy for wetting the bed. And she told me to take my sheets and took me down to the bathroom. They ran a cold bath, and I had to wash my sheets in the bath and take off my clothes and my pyjamas and put them in the bath, wash them. So I was standing there naked while she was slapping me, hitting me and beating me for being a dirty little boy, as she called it. And they had this stuff called carbolic soap, where they told me to clean the sheets with this carbolic soap, which later on I knew was another punishment they used on me, because we used to have in the bathroom a cubicle bath for the girls, more or less, and an outside bath where the boys probably use. If you was lucky, you might get the cubicle, but if more than one person wanted the bath, you inevitably got the outside bath. And the younger you were prone to using the outside bath. And when we tried to be clever, we used to get the toothbrush, because it had like a bolt lock on the door. We used to slide that in a lock to try and lock it, so you couldn't lift the catch, because it was wedged by the toothbrush. So you use a toothbrush. And I remember Audrey Wilson coming round and flinging the back bathroom window open, and then telling me to get the toothbrush out of the door immediately. And I had got this towel, and I went to the door to open it, and the two of them came in, and they started bathing me and using this carbolic soap on me. And they were washing my private parts with this carbolic soap. They were slapping me in the bath, and they was using this floor scrubbing brush on me to clean me. And they was putting the carbolic soap in my mouth and in my eyes, and they said, "We'll wash your mouth out of soap," because I'm screaming, I'm shouting, and causing Mary hell. In actual fact, there was more water on the bathroom floor than there was probably in the bath. And I'm trying to curl up into a little ball to protect myself, and they're touching me and doing things to me and trying to force the soap into areas of my body. And yeah, it was tough times. They were tough times, and I suffered a lot of abuse in Laburnum Cottage with Grace Robinson and all the beatings and slappings continued. Several baths. You just, what could you do? I ran away 3 times when I was in Laburnum. I managed to walk nearly all the way to London. And I remember I got as far as Tooting. I must have been about 8 the first time. And for a young lad trying to walk to Shepherd's Bush from Banstead was a long, long way, you know, and I had to walk across Banstead Common and Banstead Golf Course. And the worst part about it, I got to Tooting and I was absolutely shattered. My little legs were hurting me. And I remember seeing Tooting police station, and I thought, if I go and tell the police, they're going to put me in the Black Maria and take me back to Beechholme. So I couldn't walk anymore. So I don't know why, I just turned round and I walked back to Beechholme. And by the time I got to Sutton on the way back, I was absolutely shattered and knackered. And it started, the heavens opened, and I was only in like a little jumper and some shorts and that, and some trainers, some black trainers. They used to give you these black plinsolls and these grey socks with little stripes on them. And I remember walking across Bansted Downs in the dark, and I was petrified, absolutely petrified. And I just didn't know what to do. And I got back to Beechholme, and then I managed to sneak. And I was looking, and I was actually wringing wet, absolutely wet through. You'd think I'd just been dumped in the sea or in the swimming pool itself. And I was looking in, and I see the deputy superintendent of Beechholme was in the house talking to the house mother. And I tried to sneak in the back door, but I was wringing wet. And of course, as I've come in the back door, they've heard, because it's late at night, because they used to put you to bed about 7 o'clock anyway, and it's dark. So I don't know what time of year it was, but it was dark when I got back. And now the thing about the bath was quite a bit of a punishment for you, you know.
Alan, can I just take you back to, you know, when you ran away? And, you know, when we're looking at a little child here, a little 8-year-old, usually an 8-year-old child will be safe at home with their mum and dad, you know, and comfort. Where were your parents when all this was going on? Were they completely unaware?
Well, my father died when I was 10.
Right.
I never ever saw my father again when I went to Beechholme. Never ever. Never saw my dad again. From going into Beechholme and the beatings I used to get when I was 4, I don't recall much of my father. Yeah, I never ever saw him again.
Right.
So it was my mother I was going, well, he was still alive, but I was trying to get back to home. I was trying to get back to my mother. I mean, at the end of the day, she was my mother. I mean, she wasn't my mother was never cruel to me or punished me like my father or they did in Beechholme. Beechholme was very, 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 very cruel place. And yeah, they made me have a bath. You know, this is what I'm saying to you there. The thing about the baths whatever punishment you seem to get when you got a beating, they used to put you in a hot bath or used to put you in a bath. I had baths where they were holding me under the water, like ducking me under the water, and the carbolic soap. I always remember the carbolic soap. They used to use that all the time on you, put it in your eyes and mouth. And the favourite thing is there used to be a saying, wash your mouth out with soap. And I didn't think that was true. No, I didn't think it was true. To me, it was always true. And the saying, I wash your mouth out with soap, I don't know if it still rings today or if it's been said today, but it was very true in them days. They actually did do it. That's the only terminology I can use. They actually did do that as a punishment to children in Beechholme. And then I was getting used to the beatings, kicking up the arse, pushed down the corridor. And another thing of them grabbing hold of your back clothes and dragging you backwards. Well, you'd lose your balance and fall over, and you'd end up on the floor or something like that, and then they'd kick you on the floor or something like that. Again. And and you'd be the name calls, and they'd call you. I was never very good in school. I went to the Beechholme Primary School when I was in Laburnum, and my teacher was a guy called Mr. Margates. Mr. Margate was another abuser. So we've got Audrey Wilson, my own father, abusing me, and then we've got the 2 house parents, Audrey Wilson and Grace Robinson. We used to call her Granny Grace because she looked so old, and with her hair in rollers. And the kids said, whatever you do, don't call her Granny Grace, you'll get really punished. And I remember a time when, going back, it's quite poignant, that when Audrey Wilson was abusing me in the dormitory, the kids turned their backs on you and just rolled over. So if they got caught, they were punished themselves. Yeah. Or if they witnessed it or saw anything, they were frightened for their own safety, want for a better word, or want for a better kind of putting it into a situation or into a cliche or whatever the case might be. And the guys used to turn, the girls would be in the girls' dormitory, the boys would be in the boys' dormitory, and you were not allowed up there. You were not allowed to use the upstairs bathroom staff used there. The staff had dormitories or their own rooms upstairs. And Audrey Wilson's was right across. From when I slept, I could see her every time her door opened and the light opened from her door, and I was petrified because I thought she was coming to get me again. You know, every time her door opened, I absolutely froze, and you know, because she'd come in and she's standing in the doorway, and she was quite a big woman, and her frame was virtually like, you know, took all the light out of the doorway, and you could hardly see the light coming from her bedroom behind. It was very, very scary for a child to go through. And then I was in Beechholme Primary.
I'll stop you there a second, Alan, because I've made a big connection between mental health issues and childhood abuse. How did this, I mean, we'll go back to, again, we're going to go back to all of this in a minute, but I just need to ask you, how did this affect you as an adult? Did you find that you couldn't sleep at night, or that you were getting terrors because of...
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, I had that, I still have it now.
Night terror.
I'm 66 next March, so I'm 65 at the moment, and I still have it.
Yeah.
To this day. I still suffer to this very, very day. And it doesn't help, because we'll come to, let's go back to a bit more of the punishment that I was getting in Beechholme. So I'm in Laburnum, my first cottage that I was in. The door was painted yellow. It was the colour of like a laburnum blossom or laburnum leaf or whatever it was, the flower. And I remember this Mr. Margate never used to learn nothing in the primary school. All I remember being very, very harsh and very cruel. He'd hit you with a wooden ruler. I'm talking about in them days, it wasn't one of these little thin plastic rulers. It was a big, heavy-duty wooden ruler, and it'd whack you around the back of the head, slap you around the head, hit you across the knuckles. And that's another saying when people say, wash your mouth out with soap, and then you're getting wrapped across the knuckles. I can tell you, and I can promise you, it actually happened to children. I was one of them children. I was behind them closed doors. I know what went on. And he was a very abusive teacher, and he didn't really teach you anything. And my education really suffered because I couldn't read and write or do anything like that. And there was another abuser in the primary school called Mr. Whiteman. Mr. Whiteman, he was terrible.
Sorry, we'll name all of these at the end. I want to name them all properly at the end.
And he would chase you around the playground, and he'd get you cornered and round the blinds. But he'd do it when all the children were in the playground. He wasn't frightened to do it because he knew he could get away with it. And he would say to you, "What you got in your What you got in your pocket, boy?" And you only had these little shorts on. So it didn't take much for an adult to put his hand into a boy's shorts, trousers, and he was putting his hand into your shorts and feeling you, touching you. I had nothing in. I had no possessions. I was in a kid's zone. I don't know if I even had a hanky, and so I had nothing in my pockets. And he was, "What you got in your boy?" As a way of getting to search you. And
hang on. Alan?
Yeah, my battery's just a little bit low. I'll plug this in so I don't lose you completely. So just bear with me a second.
Okay. Right, anyway, I'm back. Okay, we're back.
Sorry about that. And Mr. Whiteman, he was an abuser in Beechholme, prolific abuser in Beechholme. He did a lot of other things. Justice for Beechholme survivors.
Good. That's what we want to see. So we're going back to this bastard, Whiteman. How do you spell
Yeah.
How do you spell his name?
Whiteman. MAN.
Okay, thank you.
And he went on from Beechholme, when Beechholme closed, to work in a children's home called Shirley Oaks, and abused. And I think he got convicted for child abuse in Shirley Oaks. And he was one of the many paedophiles that was in Shirley Oaks. And a few of the abusers, there was when I was in Laburnum, I think they put me in the Cubs or something. And we had this guy who's the Cub master, and he was abusing the children. Didn't happen to me. You know, there were close calls, but there was so much going on with, you know, what they did to children. A lot of it, as later, this might seem strange to say this, but you kind of got immune to it. You know, the beatings and the punishments were more what they did to me. The physical abuse, a little bit of sexual abuse in the touching up and that. I was never ever penetrated. So I was quite one of the lucky ones. And I'll always maintain that I was never ever penetrated. I don't know what happened to me before I went to Beechholme, but I can honestly say that I don't remember that happening to me in Beechholme. I remember being touched in various places in Beechholme, in the anus and around the genitals and that. But I never ever never went for anything like that. And then as I got a little bit older, from that, they put me in a house called Larch, or a cottage called Larch, and there was a guy in there called Ian McLaren. And Ian McLaren was, there was only about 12 kids in there to start off with. I don't know what happened. They kind of like, when I was in Laburnum, because I was getting a little bit older, they find it more and more difficult to control me. And I had issues, and I wouldn't talk to, because in them days we used to call our welfare officers social workers, childcare officers. So they were named CCOs. And it was like the first 2 years I had Miss Lazenby, which was a very good woman. And she stayed friends with my sister, eldest sister. But then after that, it was like I was some sort of case file. And I'd get a different social worker or a CCO every month. And when they came, you had to go to the office and sit in the office with them and talk to the welfare. And they had like this day book. And they wrote everything down I kept a record of all what happened to you in the running of the house. And those records were submitted into the office every now and then. And everything you did was put into this little red book kind of thing. And we used to go in there and we used to talk to him. And I wouldn't talk to him in the end, because I said to him, what is the point of me talking to him? And then next month, I'm going to have another one. I'm going to have to talk to her again. And you didn't feel comfortable with them. You didn't have any trust in any of them, because you thought, well, what's the point? You're going to, and I wouldn't talk to them. I just wouldn't have nothing to do with them. And I used to get punished for that, not doing that. And then I remember Grace and Audrey Wilson were finding it harder to control me. And I was running away. I ran away on a couple of occasions. And they got one of the male staff, Peter McTavish, another abuser. Peter McTavish. Huge guy, like a rugby player, hands like shovels. Used to beat the boys in Kerrier House, because all the naughty boys were put in his house. And there was a lot of abuse that went on in Kerrier. And he came down and dragged me by the scruff of the neck up to Kerrier and give me a good hiding and beating in there. Says, you've been rude to staff and very not doing as you're told and disobedient. And they're saying that, saying all these sort of things and about you. And I was just petrified of the size of this guy. And when he hit you, you stayed hit, because he knocked 10 barrels of shit out of you. And he'd give you a good hiding. And then they'd turn around and say to me, go and get a bath. And the thing about the baths was, it was like a ritual. It was almost like a sacrilege. You had to have a bath to be cleansed, or, you got ducked and held under the water, and the punishment and the carbolic soap and the treatment of children was quite horrible treatment. I mean, and then when I was a little bit bigger, they put me in Larch, and it was only about, I don't know, and I think one or two of us were a little bit difficult because we were rebelling a little bit against the treatment we was getting. And this Ian McLaren, he'd use his fist on you. He'd beat you with his fist.
How do you spell his name? Sorry, how do you...
Ian McLaren.
Yeah.
He's still alive.
Ian McLaren.
Yeah.
How do you...
He's still alive today.
Can you spell his name for us, Alan?
I think, I'm not too sure, but I think it's McClarand.
McLaren's.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm writing these names down, which we'll say and talk about in a minute. Okay, so coming back again, so it sounds a little bit that the bath ritual sounds a bit satanistic, you know, like a bit like SRA, satanistic ritual abuse, that they were using. And who was actually in charge of this? I mean, who let all of this happen?
There was a guy called, another abuser, his name was Jeffrey Banner.
Right.
Jeffrey with a G, not a J. Right. Jeffrey Banner, B-A-N-N-E-R, was the superintendent of Beechholme.
Right.
And he would take the girls into his office, pull their knickers down, bend them across the desk, and slap them. And when I went to Banstead Police Station and told them about the abuse that was happening to me at Banstead Police Station in Beechholme.
Oh yeah.
And they took
How did that go? How did that go? How did they react?
Not very good, because it was almost like the police were implicit, and the police had something to do with the abuse that was going on in Beechholme. It was almost like a paedophile ring, because they took me back to Beechholme in this Black Mariah. I was dragged up before Jeffrey Banner, the superintendent, and he got me to sit on his knee, and he was bouncing me up and down on his knee in a perverse way and trying to get worked up off of me, because I knew something was happening. And he said to me, little boys like you that tell lies get sent away. You get sent to Stanford House, or you get sent away. And they make all these threats on you, what they were going to do to you. And in the corner of the office, he had a cane, and it was on full view for everybody to see. He'd point to it to warn you that that's the way you were heading, towards the cane. And then, you know, he was a very abusive man. And
you mentioned paedophile rings. Were you ever put into a situation like that, or can you tell us a little bit about the paedophile?
There were times when we were told we were going to be taken in a van somewhere, and I remember seeing the vans arriving in Beechholme, and they arrived opposite the primary school near the nursery, and the kids would used to be taken away, and I never saw the kids again.
You never saw them again?
No.
So they never came back?
No.
So what happened to the children?
Don't know. Nobody knows.
No one knows?
No.
That's me.
And
do you remember what years that was happening, approximately?
Well, it'd been the 60s.
In the 60s. Goodness. Okay.
And then there was talk of one boy, a guy called James Reeves, being taken to Elms Guest House in Barnes from Beechholme, and there was other children that were in Beechholme were also in a children's home called the Hollies. And there's kind of like a link between Shirley Oaks, Beechholme, the Elms Guest House, and even Dolphin Square comes to be mentioned. All these places seem to be linked in the huge paedophile ring in the south of London. And Surrey seemed to be very, very bad for abuse. And there's talk of children were taken in these vans. And I remember trying to work out what I saw in this van, and I'm not too sure if it was like a smiley sun, like a sunshine coach.
Right.
And Jimmy Savile went to Beechholme in 1972. He went to a lot of places, Jimmy Savile. In 72 is when I left. But he went there round about the time I was leaving. There's so many weird things happened in Beechholme, because I remember when I was in Ash, and I'm sure I was in Ash in 1968, and we used to see like a light on in the church, kind of like where the altar was, and it didn't look bright enough to be a strong light or a bulb of any sort, more like a light of a candle or candles, kind of a flickering light. And lots and lots of people witnessed this and saw this. And then in 1968, they said there is a link to the church, or the burning down of the church, to satanic ritual abuse at Beechholme. And a lot of children were taken away. A lot of people. Towards the end, it was strange because kids were taken all over the world. They ended up in Canada, Australia, South Africa, and the police that have reopened an investigation into Beechholme have had to go all over the world to investigate and do stuff. But going back to the Larch, just seeing McLaren, he was a very, very abusive man. Where the kitchen sinks were, we had to wash up after tea.
And he's still alive, you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh.
Him and a guy called Gordon Reed. They're both alive.
How do you spell the other one?
Gordon, as in the name
Gordon.
Gordon. Reed, R-E-I-E-D, I think it is. Reed.
Okay. Ian McLaren and Gordon Reed.
Both alive to this day. Still alive. So out of 8 abusers that I had in Beechholme, 2 are still alive.
Okay, because I was.
The rest of them are all dead. Pete McTavish died 18 years ago. Audrey Wilson and Granny Grace, I think, are both dead. McLaren and Reed are still alive. Margates, Whiteman, I don't know what happened to them. Whiteman, I know there's links with him at Shirley Oaks, because I've looked it up, and there is a Mr. Whiteman who was a school teacher, went from Beechholme to Shirley Oaks.
Right.
And his name is on the social list, the Shirley Oaks Association. That's on there.
I want you to say here now, to shame these monsters, so the whole world can know who they are.
Yeah,
they're alive.
Well, I'll come to that as we go along, because there's a lot more to talk about.
Yeah. Carry on.
And where they had the kitchen sink. I remember going back to in another punishment they used to do to you in Laburnum was that if you didn't eat your meals, right, they used to take it away from you and put it before you the next day and make you eat it again. Because if you didn't eat your meals and try and make you eat it again, that was another punishment they did to you. If you didn't eat your meals, you didn't have anything else. You weren't allowed anything else. And I remember they put this piece of fish in front of me once, and I didn't know what it was, and it smelled horrible. It was like supposed to have been smoked haddock, or I don't know, but it was yellow, and it was swimming in, looked like dishwater, but it was supposed to be cooked in milk or something, but they weren't cooks. It was rubbish. And I remember they were forcing me to eat this fish. I didn't eat it. And they gave me it the next day. And they were sat next to me. One of the staff was sat next to me and was trying to force me to eat this food, even trying to force it into my mouth with a fork. And this bit of fish, this cod, this haddock, a bone got stuck in my throat and it scratched my windpipe. And it's weird because from that day onwards to when I got married in my 30s, I never ate fish again. Never ate it at all. I was too frightened to eat it because it ripped all my throat. And I was taken to, because Beechholme had a...
I ask you, what happened when you go, if you got sick or something like that happened to you? Did you get to see a doctor? I mean...
They had like a little mini hospital there called...
as well, the doctors and hospitals?
Yeah, they had all of that inside Beechholme. It was like a little mini hospital. It's like a little town.
Right.
It had its own school, its own offices, its own play areas, its own nursery, its own library, swimming pool, big fields for recreation, and a sick bay, which is like a little mini hospital, where you'd go there for your eye test.
Alan, was this a private home, or was it actually owned by social services? Or
It was originally owned by London County Council.
So the taxpayers' money was helping to abuse you and all the other kids and do all these awful things.
At one stage, I think Beechholme had up to 900 children in it.
900?
Yeah, and when we were there, I would say it was nearer 300 or 400. But 400 children over a period of, well, I was there 11 years, and I was just one family, and both my sisters and my brother were abused in Beechholme. My sister never talks about it, but the same abuser that abused my sister Marjorie, and Mr. Gray, was convicted of sex offences later in life. He was convicted of being a sex abuser, a paedophile. Wow. But there was a girl that was in the same house as my sister, but a bit later on. And I work closely with now. She's part of the Beechholme Survivors Group.
It's a survivors group, which we'll talk about.
And she is an amazing woman. What she did was saw him abusing one of the children in the dormitory. This Mr. Gray in Thistle, where my sister was. Every house was named after a tree. Remember, they did this with a lot of the children's homes. Named them, add the tree element or something like that, linked to a lot of these homes. And this guy was abusing. Mr. Gray was abusing. They used to do the same in Thistle. He used to bath the children with this carbolic soap, because there were other people that said the same, that they used this as a punishment in other houses. And the thing about bathing children and washing children, even developing girls. And my sister would have been developing at this time. And he was abusing one girl on the actual bed itself in the dormitory. And this girl saw him abusing the girl and told him to get off. And she had a few run-ins with him, and she got beaten and knocked down the stairs and things like that. We all got that. And she later went before Jeffrey Banner, and she was one of the girls that had her knickers pulled down in a backside spank. They put her at age of 14 into a mental institution for speaking out. And you find that with children's homes, they used to, like, police stations always used to be built near courts, and children's homes always used to be built near mental homes. And they used to transfer children into mental homes to shut them up. It was a way of shutting you up for talking about your abuse. And they did that in Beechholme. They did that in Beechholme. And this Ian McLaren was in Larch. He used to punch, the living daylights out of you. He used to beat you if he was fighting another man, but he was fighting children, beating children with his fist. And he was like a rugby. He was a athletic type of sporty guy.
So,
and he made you bleed and punched you, and you wouldn't think twice about punching in the mouth, in the stomach. They tried to hit you in the stomach, in the back, or areas where you wouldn't show.
Yeah, that's what he would. Dave, can you go back to with the fish, where the bone stuck in your throat, and you went to see a doctor? I mean, did it feel like, you could maybe tell someone what was going on?
They were trying to force. I didn't realise at the time. They were trying to force dry bread, down my throat to try and dislodge it. And I think they did dislodge the bone, or they got the bone out somehow. But it scratched the inside of my throat, and my throat was sore for days and days and days on end. And I don't think I ate much for, I don't know, probably a week. I think I was trying to nibble on bread and jam. They used to give us these plastic jugs at the tea table, and they were kind of like, it was orange juice, but it was made of like powder, and it was horrible. You could taste bits in it. And they used to stick, we used to come down in the morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, and we used to line up in the corridor And then we used to stand and we used to all go around the kitchen table, and they used to get this big, huge 5-litre tin of malt, and they used to get a spoonful of malt and put it in there. But they used to give you other bits and pieces, and I'm sure they used to give us tablets as well, or put the tablets in something as well. Somebody saw some white tablets and some other tablets, but I can't prove that.
Right.
I mean, and then again, at the end of the day, it's my word against theirs. But a lot of the children are singing from the same hymn sheet. They're naming the same people, the same cottages, and a lot of the abusers went on to be convicted. Yeah, we talk about this in a bit. That no convictions were ever. Nothing was done against any of my abusers. But coming back to McLaren, he hit me so hard sometimes. He used to knock me off my feet. He knocked me into another room once, hitting me and beating me. And he was so powerful and strong. Where the kitchen sink was, the sinks were 2 sinks. You had a double sink. And where we used to wash up after dinner, they used to make me wash up after the dinner. You had like a kind of rota where you either wiped up, put away, or washed up. And it'd hold you against the sink, and it'd rub up against you where the sink was, and you couldn't move because you had the kitchen cupboards. It'd hold onto the stainless steel sinks with his strength, and then just pull himself against you, and then he'd just rub up against you. And he used to fight you and wrestle you on the ground, and he'd sit on your back, and he'd rub his genitals against your back as if he was riding a horse. He was a very, very abusive, cruel man, and he was bathing children at 12.
Unbelievable. Sick.
And then from there, I went to a cottage called Ash, and I was going home at weekends. I was laying me home. So I was going on my home from Banstead Station, walking through the woods and everything, and up to Banstead Station, getting on a train to Victoria, then a number 11 bus, and going to Shepherd's Bush to see my mum. My dad had died and she remarried, but I remember my stepdad putting a bottle across my mum's head once, and she hadn't had a wig on. She wore a wig. If she hadn't had the wig on, it would have split her head open. And she used to send me down to the off licence and get a quart of Guinness. Guinness used to make bottles of Guinness in quart bottles, brown quart bottles, and she'd send me down to the off licence, and because I was a regular, or she, I think, done some part-time work in a pub, they knew who I was, so they served me in the off licence, and I was underage anyway. But they used to. She used to buy me a bottle of lemonade and some chocolate. So I can always remember when I was at home watching Match of the Day, eating bars of chocolate and drinking lemonade. I'm sure I remember that. I'm sure I remember it in black and white. And then I went to Ash Cottage.
But when you went back to your mum's, did you try to tell her anything? Did you try to stop her from sending you back there?
No, I didn't. Unfortunately, in the 70s, it was still a taboo subject. It was children were seen or not heard, and you couldn't say anything. If you said anything, you got punished even more. And if nobody in the 70s, I mean, I was in there, Beechholme in the 60s, so I'm born in the 50s. But if you talked, and this is honest, if you say to people, did you talk about sex in the 70s? Right? Nobody talked about gays, lesbians, homosexuals, LGBT, or whatever the case is. Sex was still, a hush-hush thing, you know, and it was quite strict, even in them ages, because your parents used to keep an eye on their young teenage girls and stuff like that, and it was slightly different. As we've progressed, it's changed, I believe, where parents half the time don't even know where the children are.
Did you ever tell your mum what happened? Did you ever
No.
once to clear anything up?
I was too frightened to.
It's okay. And
I was too
even as an
frightened, dude,
adult,
because
even as
I
an
had to
adult,
go back to Beechholme. I had
as
to
an
go back.
adult, though, Alan, as an
Sorry?
adult,
Never ever told anybody about it.
you never
Never
spoke
told,
about it.
never told anybody about it. I kept it a secret from everybody all my life until I got married. And my wife, I used to have nightmares, and I used to jump up in the middle of the night because I had my first 25 years were horrendous. And even after leaving from Beechholme, they stuck me in a hostel. And all I started to do was fight, get drunk, get arrested, get myself into trouble. I've ended up in every prison in London for doing stupid stuff. I was in Wandsworth prison when they still had cold showers. You weren't allowed radios. Very strict regime. And I remember the gallows in Wandsworth, and I was in Brixton, Wormwood Scrubs, and I thought, bloody home from home. I was born in Duquesne Road, and I ended up back at Duquesne Road from birth to prison. And I was at Brixton, Pentonville, then I went to an open prison in Norwich somewhere. I'd done a lot of stupid things because I used to turn to drink and get pissed. And I do stupid things in drink. And I was stupid and foolish.
Who can blame you, Alan? You were holding all of this inside. You were in shock. I mean,
I never had a good education in Beechholme. I mean, I struggle with my spelling to this day. I'm not very good at spelling. I try and do my best to write. My writing, I think, is awful. But my spelling is my maths is non-existent. I can't do maths. I could give you change of a fiver, but beyond that, I'm not that clever. And it's hard to explain it to people. Even I went from Larch, where McLaren was an abusive house parent, Uncle Ian, we used to call him, to Uncle Gordon. And I remember his wife I was a little bit older and developing. And I remember lying on the bed in her staff quarters, and she had the cat on her chest, and the cat she said, stroke the cat. She was making me stroke the cat, but she was wanting me to stroke her breast. And I did. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't sexually aware of what I was doing, kind of thing. I don't know if it makes sense. It's just hard to try and get people to understand what.
Also, sorry to stop you there, but the confusion of a child, an innocent child. As I say, I went through nothing like you went through, but I did have my own abuse. I was abused as well by the family dentist, which we'll go into another time. But you go into total shock because children are so innocent, so trusting. They trust everybody, and then the minute that starts to happen, it's like you lose your trust, and children feel to blame for everything.
Yeah.
And so all of that guilt builds up inside, and then you start to hurt yourself because
they put me in outside school when I was 11. I went to a school called North Park Secondary Modern, and it was a long walk to North Park. It's about a 3-mile walk every day for a young lad. Like you're doing 6 miles to go to and from school. Okay, might mean nothing to some people, but to a young kid, it's a lot. And I thought so anyway. And because I had labels in my clothes, they used to bully you, and they used to call you an orphan, and they'd pull your clothes, try and open to show everybody, look, this boy's an orphan. He's got labels in his clothes. He's labelled. And I didn't last long at North Park. My education was very good. I failed my 11+. I went to a school near Rose Hill called Gainsborough, and I got beaten up by about 15 kids, all laid into me ripping all my clothes off of me, trying to get to my labels with Beechholme written in them. And what I used to get, I think it was either 5p or 6p as bus fare to go on the 164 bus from Beechholme to this school. And they stole me money. So when I was bloodied and bleeding from being beaten, and I walked out of the school, and I went to look in my pockets and I didn't have no money, so I had to walk all the way back to Beechholme from quite a long way out, probably 5, 6 mile, 7 mile walk back to Beechholme. And then because I had so much problems with schools and I didn't have a good education, they put me in a place.
When you came back from the school all beaten up, what did the bastards do to you when you got home?
Just told you, go and get a bath and clean yourself up. The ritual, the bath.
They carried on that. So basically there was no love for you, nothing, no compassion.
Oh no, none at all.
No,
absolutely no.
As a child.
And it affects you in life as well, that, because I'll tell you a little bit more. I'll let you into that as well, because if it affects you in all quarters, in every single which way you go about your life. And coming back to Beechholme, what they did then is they put me in a special school in Beechholme called the Orchard, where they used to dress you in this like green uniform. So you'd have a green jumper, a green polo shirt, and they used to put you in these boiler suits. And I remember being in the Orchard with Nancy Davids. Nancy Davids did a documentary on a girl called Gal Boone. Gal is Dead is the story. And that was all filmed in Beechholme. A lot of it was filmed in Beechholme. And I was part of a documentary filmed by the BBC.
In Beechholme itself?
Mm.
They actually came and filmed you while you were still there?
Yeah.
Just after you left?
BBC still got it, but they never showed it.
No, what I'm saying is, was the documentary made while you were still there?
Yes.
This was going on?
Yes.
You're kidding me.
No.
And it was shown to the public. What did they show in this documentary?
I don't know. They had me, because where the Orchard was, they had me, they gave me a dry brush, and they said to me there was these murals on the walls the kids had painted on brick walls. So they had me dabbing the wall as if I was painting the mural as they were filming me, right? Okay. And I can remember the instructions of them to try not to look at the camera, or look directly at the camera, try not to look at people or look around yourself, pretend, you know, you're painting this picture on the wall. And so I had to, every now and then as part of the interview, I had to dab this wall as if I was painting while they was interviewing me and talking to me. And then they
give a good image, obviously. They were trying to show the public that you were doing something nice to keep the home nice. So, I mean, yeah. Point, Ian, did you not? Sorry, Ian, Alan.
Alan.
Sorry there. Why did I call you Ian there, Alan?
Alan, yeah, it's all right.
Sorry about that.
No.
At that point, Alan, did you not? How old were you when that happened?
I must have been, if I went to secondary school, I've got to be 12, 13 now.
Okay, so when they came to do the filming, at that point, was there a part of you that wanted to say, I've got to tell you something. I've got to tell you what's really going on here?
I couldn't.
But did you feel that you wanted to?
No, I couldn't.
Because you were
I was too frightened. I kind of like, by the time I got to Ash, this might sound shocking to say this, but I was so used of being beaten, I kind of laughed at Gordon Reed when he used to hit me and punch me. And I turned back and laughed at him and smile at him. And I thought, you can't hurt me anymore. I'm not that young boy anymore. If I said I was becoming immune, does that make sense?
Yes, totally. Totally, because as I said, I just went back. I thought I'd killed the man that was molesting me. And when I went back, I was relieved because he opened the door and he was alive. I was 11 years old. So I totally get it.
I mean, the boys, some of the older boys in Beechholme were bullies themselves. And I ended up, an abuser can become an abuser. And I ended up being a bit of an abuser in the sense that I was made to beat other boys. If I didn't beat in Beech, I became a very bad bully. Because if I didn't fight other kids, I would get beaten up. So I was made to fight them. Otherwise, it was me. So it was dog eat dog. If I didn't fight him, they would beat me. Right, and that's the older boys. So you weren't only getting abused by the... They
forced you into that. They forced you to be that.
Yeah.
It wasn't your choice. You were forced into that by them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hated myself for it because I know one of the boys is still alive today, and I hate myself for what I did to him.
But it wasn't your fault.
It wasn't my fault. I mean, he never saw it like that. He just saw me as an abuser. I beating him.
Horrible.
And it was a cruel life. And then it was. I mean, the best house I was in Beech. That was in my. But I was a nasty little sod by the time I went to Beech. 14, 15, 16 when I was probably in Beech. 15, 16, and I used to throw bottles at the front door. I used to tell the staff to fuck off, and I turned into a right nasty little and aggressive person. And I was fighting in Epsom Town. I turned out to be a bit of a scrapper.
You had no love.
Did fighting. And I turned out to be a horrible person and did some horrible things. And my first 25 years, like London was like my Beirut when I left Beechholme, because it was like a big fight in the hostel. All he was doing was fighting, scrapping, trying to survive. It was difficult. I slept on the streets of London rough because I had nowhere to go. I was sleeping on sofas. And people were getting fed up with me and bored with me. My own family didn't want me anymore. I was into drink. I tried to hold a few jobs down, and yeah, I went from job to job, from pillar to post. Very, very lost young man, and then I met my wife.
Why, Alan, we have to alert people to protect children, to protect innocence, because it completely screws up your life. And you go out there, you can't have a normal life after something like that. How can you? You're completely shocked.
Well, you said, Lauren, about early
society to end this, completely. So can we just go back a bit to when did they close down this place?
Beechholme was closed in 1974.
1974 they closed it down. And how did that happen? How did they get closed down in 1974? How did that happen? Who got it closed down and why?
Right, so the weird thing about it is originally the London County Council owned Beechholme. And then it was sold off to the Greater London County Council, or the GLC took over from the LCC. So originally London was run by the London County Council, and then it was run by the Greater London Council. And then it was separated and done into borough councils. Like Hammersmith was my birth borough, and then you had, like, now you have a mayor of London, which is responsible for all the borough councils. So that's how it is, and that's how it's run today. But Beechholme was run by, in 1964, Beechholme was run by Wandsworth Council. I was in children's homes or respite care in Shirley Oaks, Elsfield. They were run by Wandsworth, although Hammersmith was my birth borough. Supervisory orders were, I'm going after both councils, Hammersmith and Fulham. Hammersmith and Fulham and Wandsworth. I'm going after both of them. Making a case against them now.
Are there any still open? Is this still going on? Is this still going on in any?
Yes.
Children's homes, right? Which children's homes?
I don't know the names of the children's
How do you
homes,
know
but
it's
I've
still
met
going
lots of
on?
victims. I've
Right.
met lots of victims over the last few years, and there's new cases coming out all the time, and you're hearing about. It's starting to be talked about where it was a taboo subject. They weren't talked about. See, they seem to think more on other things than they do on children. Children are not spoken about. I'm not going to go down the political route on this, where we've had demonstrations of recent that have taken more media coverage than actual children's lives. And to me, you know, if all lives matter to me, and I think children's lives matter. Children's lives matter. And when we were in Beechholme, we were all colours and creeds. There were black, white, pink, yellow, blue. They were all from all over the world, the children. And we were brought up like brothers and sisters. We slept in the same rooms. We washed in the same rooms. We ate in the same rooms. Went to school together. We did lots and lots of things together.
To me, the thing to me, Alan, is that children are the most important thing. They're the future, you know, and they're innocent. And we, you know, adults are supposed to guard them. They can't protect themselves. And so you're saying this is still going on in this day and age, in 2020. It's still going on.
Yeah.
And can you...
Well, it's proof of that, because most of the if you said there was 48 if you said there was 48 councils in this country, right? So you've got your Oxford Council, your Manchester, your Sunderland Council. Now, there was children's homes called Witherwack in Sunderland. Children were abused under that council. You had Kencore in Northern Ireland. Children were abused in that. You had Hope de la Grande, Jersey. Children were abused there. You had Beechholme, Shirley Oaks. You had Beechwood, where Melanie Shaw was. Nottingham Council. And only last week, Banbury Council released grooming figures for the Oxford area. A new case of grooming's just come out from, and some of it stems from children in care, because the people involved in care are virtually involved in it. It's like a ring of paedophiles or people. To me, children now are more valuable than drugs.
Yes, I know. Sex trafficking.
You can use a drug once. You can sell a child 100 times, and children are sold and have been sold in this country for donkey's years. And our politicians, you can go back to Clement Attlee or the 30s and the 40s or before. The abuse that's gone on in this country, where the politicians knew all about it. And we can talk about politicians that we know that were paedophiles, and we can talk about the BBC that had all them paedophiles in there. The Gary Glitters, the Rolf Harrises, the Jimmy Savills.
We've got the Rains list,
the Stuart Hall. Yeah, I know about the Rains list.
Everything
we know about, and I will say it. We know about. I'm not frightened to, because
no, say it. Say everybody.
You know, I camped in London for a while. One of the jobs I did when I found a little bit of space was I started a cabin in London. It was mini cabin, but it was cabin with a company that you could only have a limit of 4 years old cars, so you had to have a fairly new car-ish in them days. But it was quite a prominent plan, and the likes of, I remember driving the likes of Koo Stark when she was seeing Prince Andrew. I remember going to the likes of the Elms guest house in Barnes to take fares and bring people back from there. So I knew where it was, because I was based in that area. I knew Dolphin Square, and we were often waved on in Dolphin Square to go and pick a fare up, whereas normally you were stopped by security. And whenever a cab was called, you never get stopped and asked. You just went and done what you had to do. So we knew something was going on in some of these establishments, and with its link to Westminster. And the rituals similar to what went on in Beechholme with the ducking of children in the bath. These things have come out of, wild parties that were supposed to have allegedly happened in Dolphin Square. I have to say that because it's like myself. You know, what's happened now is that in my 60s, there's been a new police investigation into the abuse that happened in Beechholme. and Surrey police have opened an investigation called Operation Brockhurst. And they came up from Guildford to interview me. And like, I've got to the stage where in my 30s, when I married my wife, I still having nightmares about Beechholme and Audrey Wilson in the dormitory and being beaten and so on and so forth. Gav used to calm me down. In my younger days, when I was in the hostels and I started to go out and meet girls and started courting and go to discos or whatever the case might have been, or trying to have a life, if I met a girl, I didn't know how to react because I never had no love and affection. And if a girl showed me any kind of affection, I kind of like was so infatuated with that person because I didn't know what love was. I didn't know what affection was. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know which way to go. And this is in my, you know, maturing years, my teen years. And then, you know, you're living in the outside world trying to make something of a life. Excuse me.
The messages get confused, don't they, Alan? They get confused.
And then you just don't know how to handle situations. You don't know how to. You're not trained in finance. You're not trained. You can't get a good job because you haven't got any qualifications.
Okay, so
it's tough.
It's awful. It's awful, and it has to end. As I say, our job is to protect the innocent, and this is the awakening. This is the time now where everything has to come up, and these people have to be held accountable for it, particularly anyone.
So the Operation Brockhurst, the police came up to interview me from Guildford, and they said to me, "We're doing an investigation, and your name's been mentioned." Or phoned me up and said, "Your name's been mentioned. Can we come up and speak to you?" So they came up and speak to me, and then they wanted to interview me in a recording suite. So it's like a rape suite, if I'm allowed to say that. Subconsciously, it's an interview room with a settee. They make you feel comfortable, but there's cameras in all the walls. So they interview you under film. So as the police officers, like you're conducting an interview, he's conducting an interview, and they're asking you questions. And you've got to open that can of worms. You've got to relive the nightmare that you suffered as a child. And I broke down. I cried my eyes out, opening up them old wounds and talking about what happened to me as a child. I'd lived that life. I'd been through that. My wife was settling me down and calming me down and trying to reassure me that I was safe, you know, and I didn't have to fight anymore. And then what that's done since I've had the police come back, and then it's like a septic wound. You pick long enough at it, and after 3 interviews with the police, that wound went septic, and I'm now starting to have nightmares again.
Right. Okay. So, thank you.
So it never goes from you. It's with you for life.
It's layers, isn't it? And you have these.
Yeah.
Layers.
Well said. Well said. That was a very good point. Very well said.
Brave. You're a very brave man. You're very courageous. You're a fantastic humanitarian. We call it star seeds. You know, those of us that have been put here to suffer a lot and carry a lot of the pain of the world, and then we go out and we use that pain in order to help lots of innocent people. So
that's what I do now.
Very, very brave man. And
can you see this on my shirt?
But did you have therapy? Did you have
no
support at all for everything you went through? I mean, because how can you carry all of this and not?
Well, the doctor said to me. When we lived in Spalding, when I first met Kath and got our first house, he said, "You've got issues, you've got problems, there's something with you that doesn't sit right."
So you didn't.
I think you need to see.
Right.
Sorry.
You didn't actually remember what had happened to you until then.
No, he said that you come across with like an attitude.
Right.
The doctor, in speaking to somebody, how you can psychoanalyze somebody as a medical professional and turn around and say to him, "You've got issues, you need to see a psychiatrist." And I recommend you see a psychiatrist or some counselling. I did have some counselling. I spoke to a woman and I paid for it myself and went and had some counselling, and didn't do me any good, really. I mean, she was just listening to what I had to say, like you're listening to what I've got to say. I mean, you know, what you make of me after this and what the viewers make after this, it's entirely up to them. I mean, I can't force people. People have got their own opinions and always have their own opinions. And I remember the psychiatrist who I saw, he said, there's nothing wrong with you after he done whatever he had to do to me, psychoanalyzing me, whatever, and put me through the mill with the questions and appropriate questions, the way they did it. And he said to me, there's only one thing wrong with you. He said, you've got a memory, and your memory will never let you forget. And that is true, because I've had to relive that by Operation Brockhurst, reliving that all again. And like, I'm heavily involved in trying to help victims today. Not, I hate that word. Survivors today. Survivors. Because they're not victims, so it's not through choice.
Thank you, Alan. The biggest gift I can give you is that it was not your fault. And as soon as we get that realization that this was not our fault, that we were innocent, you were innocent, an innocent child, it does help a hell of a lot. It helps something inside you just let go. If you can convince yourself more and more, and that's what I always say to anyone, particularly people that have been diagnosed with mental health issues. The first thing they say, oh, I didn't do it. You look at them, they go, I didn't do it. I had that huge guilt complex as well. But I'm not going to go into my story too much, but the minute I realized it was huge, that my mum and dad were the idiots that sent me to that awful man, it got wiped out, and I was able to breathe after that. And as I say, we'll discuss that another time. But you see, the work you're doing is, you're an angel. You're an angel. You've got to be an angel. You've got to be a special soul to be able to have gone through so much and to go out there and have the courage to tell the truth and to help others. Not everyone would. As you say, quite a lot of people, they carry on the pattern. Unfortunately, they don't have the morals and the conscience. Do you think, what is so special about you? Why do you think that you're the kind of person that will go out there to help survivors? And you didn't become, as you said, you were a bully. There's a big difference between bullying people because you were put under that kind of stress and threatened by those that were bigger than you. But why do people not become like you? They carry on the patterns. Is it because you found love? Is it because you found a woman who loves you?
Yeah, I kind of like, my wife is 8 years older than me. So there's that kind of mothering instinct. It sounds a bit strange, but that mature instinct in my wife that, I don't know, we just clicked. We met eyes. I loved her smile. I loved her hair. I just loved being with her. And it just worked. But I have a terrible problem that I've never, ever been able to get rid of. And I have this kind of phobia of being touched. I hate people touching me on the back or coming up behind me. I don't know where I've got that from probably Beechholme.
Well, obviously.
I hate anybody putting their hands on me.
You explained it. Why you did this.
And I've still got that today. I won't let anybody touch me.
I can understand that. But what I'm saying to you is, do you think that because she loved you, what's your wife's name?
Kathy.
Kathy, because you were so lucky to find a woman that actually loved you properly in the right way, it gave you the courage to be able to come up. And how old were you when you started to do this work then? When you started to tell this stuff and started to help others?
I've been doing it for about 2 years now. And it's only since the police investigation was reopened that people started reaching out and finding out about other survivors. And I got into it that way. And I've done an interview with John Wedger.
Yes, I've done interviews.
In Parliament in 2018. and I've gone on to do loads more with John. I've done some filming myself, done interviews myself, and now I have a show of my own on a Monday night.
Yeah, tell us about